Hello friends, welcome to AI Vlogs. So this week, the Biden admin released even more restrictions on GPUs that can be exported to China. Earlier this year, they banned all H100 and A100 GPUs being imported to the country, and although you can still buy them on eBay for some reason, this week they actually announced new restrictions that ban the specific SKUs of the A800 and H800 NVIDIA GPUs that were actually developed as a result of the prior regulations, just as GPUs that were slowed down enough to actually sell to China. So those are now banned, and they've even banned the RTX 4090 from being exported to China, which is kind of a bummer if you're a gamer in China, but it's ironic because it shows that the 4090 is so capable, even that can no longer be exported. So what does this mean for AI? What does it mean for the global arms race in AI, and what it means for military applications? And where are all these GPU users going to go? So the specifics of this actual regulation are pretty interesting. So there are two specific notes here that basically outline what the government wants to do here. And it pretty much has to do with banning not just GPUs, but GPUs, TPUs, FPGAs, ASICs, and a whole suite of devices basically that are capable of doing AI compute. The way that they describe this here is integrated circuits specified by section 3A090 include graphical processing units, tensor processing units, neural processors, in-memory processors, vision processors, text processors, coprocessors or accelerators, adaptive processors, field programmable logic devices, so FPGAs, and they even go down to defining integrated circuits that operate at a given speed and basically memory transfer rate, which is kind of interesting. So the word GPU is actually only used in this entire document twice, and the important place where it's used is where they define what they mean by kind of this computational capability per device limit in terms of what the US is willing to export to other countries, specifically China at this point. And pretty much what they say here is this ECCN includes, but is not limited to, central processing units, graphics processing units or GPUs, TPUs, neural processors, etc. This section 2 is what's important here. So TOPS is tera operations per second. They define Mac TOPS as a aggregated metric over all processing units on an integrated circuit. And basically they break out a formula here that says how much you can actually have for a given device. And to get back to what that formula actually means, this is what it points to. So if you put everything into that formula, kind of understand what kind of processor you're using, in theory it shouldn't matter because they actually create an outline for how many teraflops a given one of these can actually complete in terms of the software requirements that can do AI things. Basically, they say that you actually have to be below this total processing performance of 4800 or more. So similar to a lot of other, incredibly convoluted government documents, they say, yeah, as long as the arbitrary computational ability is below 4800, you can have it. And otherwise, you need to see a license exception or just need to acquire an export license that acts as an exception to these new laws that restrict the export of these GPUs to China and a few other countries. And the really interesting thing here is one could argue that the 4090 or the RTX 4090 GPU from NVIDIA technically is not designed or marketed for use in data centers, right? People do it, but you're not really supposed to, and NVIDIA is pretty not okay with that even in their drivers. But in theory, it does have a total processing performance of 4800 or more, and it's the new lower bound for all this. So it's curious to see if they're going to actually make it even lower or come up with some kind of networking limitation on top of this. And it's important to note that these companies can still export these devices as long as they have export licenses. And what's curious is, as an immediate kind of result of this, Foxconn and NVIDIA have partnered to basically pool the rest of the GPUs in China and moreover, the rest of the allocations that have been approved by the US government to create what they're calling these AI factories, which in reality is just a goofy term for a big AI data center that Foxconn will now price gouge the living you-know-what out of anyone in China trying to do this work. Now, given the demand for NVIDIA's AI GPUs across the globe, the company doesn't really think this is going to affect its financial results in the near term. However, these export rules have affected NVIDIA's stock prices before, and it's definitely something to consider now that we're fully rolling into Q4 of 2023, especially with where the economy is and with where things in Taiwan are. Meanwhile, we'll just have to wait and see how these rules will affect the production prices for the RTX 4090. Some would argue this means that we just have more of them, so prices would go down. But also NVIDIA just released the news that there's going to be a 4000 Super series. So we'll get to see if there's actually a 4090 Super. And what's curious, and the irony of the 4090 now being banned from China is, generally speaking, the 4090s that you buy in the US, not the GPUs themselves, but the OEMs that make these cards, a lot of those are actually put together in China. So ironically, nVidia will have to actually reintroduce production of the GeForce RTX 4090 and other 8102 based products outside of China. So this actually poses more challenges than just saying, yeah, you can't put them in a box and ship them to China. And it's important to note that when I speak about RTX 4090s, I mean the entire product that you get that can go into a computer, not just the GPU. The GPUs themselves are still purely produced in Taiwan. Now, transferring production to Taiwan isn't really a huge issue, but there are also a lot of brands that aren't actually headquartered in Taiwan. Colorful, which is one of NVIDIA's largest customers, which happens to be one of the world's largest graphics cards manufacturers, even if you don't see them come up in the US very much, only operates in China. And NVIDIA can attempt to supply as many 8102 GPUs to them as possible, but they're going to have to do it pretty quickly. And all this starts on November 16th, 2023, where NVIDIA will again be unable to ship its A100, A800, H100, H800, L40, L40S, and GeForce RTX 4090 cards and/or modules to China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And they actually just added Vietnam, which is kind of interesting. And as a result of all this, NVIDIA has actually filed an amicus brief with the SEC, which for those of you who don't know, basically this is a request for the SEC and the government to kind of reconsider what they're doing, specifically in terms of the securities tied to a company. So NVIDIA is pretty much saying, look, like, we want to comply to this, and we want to play by your rules, but we think this might affect US investors who have purchased shares of our company. And basically they say here, the licensing requirement may impact the company's ability to complete development of products in a timely manner, support existing customers of covered products, or supply customers of covered products outside the impacted regions, and may require the company to transition certain operations out of one or more of these identified countries. So that's what NVIDIA's statement said. And in closing, I want to go over where the GPU demand in China will go. So basically, before November 16th, you're going to be able to price gouge anyone who wants to buy a GPU in China. I'm not saying you should do that, but at the enterprise level, this is already happening. There are actually terms in certain procurement contracts that will say, yeah, like if we actually have to provide things faster, your unit price will actually go up because they know that they just want units of this. They don't really care. Because after November 16th, no one will actually be able to import any of these. And in my opinion, this will continue to create a bigger and bigger demand for cloud GPUs, the likes of Lambda and CoreWeave, and more importantly, Vast, TensorDock, and these smaller, more distributed GPU providers. Specifically because they don't have the ability to really bound their networks as much. And basically, it's a good thing for anyone who actually wants to host GPUs or buy GPUs to rent on these platforms. Me personally, I keep my cluster on Vast and TensorDock about 50% of the time. It pays my power bill. I get to use my cluster for training as much as I want. Yeah, it's kind of a cool way to procure hardware if you're not a huge company. But anyway, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this will actually have an impact on what China's working on in terms of AI? Whether it's for their economic modeling or for military applications? Are you going to buy a ton of 4090s just in case they can't make these anymore from a bunch of OEMs? Just let me know in the comments. But yeah, as always, I hope you guys like this content. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please leave a comment below. And we'll see you in the next video.